Hello everybody! For these Test Your Chess videos, what I'll be doing is going through a game with you, and at certain points in the game I will be presenting you with a series of move choices, and based on your answers you get a certain amount of points allotted to you for correct answers or good moves, in other words. And at the end of the game, add up all your points. And for this video, if you can get, I think, 18 points or more, then you have done extremely well. So this game was between Paul Morphy and Riviere, and Morphy was white, and the game started e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, d4, e takes d4. So we've got a scotch in this game. And your first series of choices. There are three options here. You can, number one, play e5 for white. e5. Option number two, you can castle. And option number three, you can recapture the pawn with your knight. Okay, so e5, castle, knight takes d4. Pause the video here, and in about 5 seconds' time I will reveal the answers. Okay, well, if you said knight takes d4, 0. Sorry about that. The reason for this is that black can equalize with knight takes e4, castles, d5, and white really doesn't quite have enough for the pawn in this position. He or she has a bit of compensation, but I actually think black is slightly better here. So knight takes d4 will get you nothing. If you said e5, if you said e5, you get a point, because this does seem to allow white to be about level, and there are certainly chances for white in this opening. So knight g4, castles, bishop c5, and then after rook e1 or bishop g5, white certainly can be said to have initiative. But the move castles, which was played in the game, also gets you 1 point. So it's a natural developing move. And now, what would you play as black in this position? Again, three choices. There is d5, there's bishop e7, and finally there is knight takes on e4. Alright, so in 5 seconds I will reveal the answer. Feel free to pause the videos. Okay, well, if you said knight takes e4, you get 2 points. This is generally considered to be good, or at the very least even, for black, because although white does get development and can win a pawn back, it still doesn't quite seem enough for white to say that they have an advantage. I think here it may be slightly better for black, but I would say this is fairly drawish actually, maybe even. So in this example line, for example, black can simply give back the pawn and be better in development. So knight takes e4 would get you 2 points. If you said d5 in this position, then 0. Sorry, because e takes, and if knight takes, then rook e1 can be very unpleasant for you. Bishop e6 is probably best, but then knight g5, and the way this position can evolve is very nasty. So here, queen h5 check would be very horrible. If g6, then, or queen f7, then queen takes d5 can be played. So black would have to play king d8, and black's pieces are very badly positioned here. Bishop g5 might be a good move here for white, as well as taking the knight and saddling black with isolated double pawns. So yeah, d5 would get you 0. If you played bishop e7, that is what was played in the game, and that gets you 1 point. Okay, so Morphy then recaptured on d4, black castled, knight c3, and now knight e5. So it's attacking our bishop on c4. Where would you put your bishop? You can put it to e2, b5, or b3. Okay, feel free to pause the video and I'll reveal the points in about 5 seconds. Okay, bishop e2 was played in the game. That will get you 1 point, for reasons I'll go into in a moment when we continue on with the game. Bishop b3 is often played in lines similar to this in the Sicilian, and I would give this 2 points because it still is controlling a lot at the centre and pointing at the black king on g8. The bishop's more active there than on e2. And for b5, I would give this 0 because after bishop c5, black can gain a tempo with c6 in a moment. So e3, bishop e3, c6, bishop back to e2 anyway, and then d6. And black there has got in the c6 move, which does control more of the centre. So going back to the game, Morphy played bishop e2. And now, what would you play as black? 3 options again. You have d6, d5, and rook e8. Okay? And 5 seconds. Well, the reason I liked bishop b3 was it did keep an eye on d5, and black can exploit that now by playing d5 himself, and this is what was played in the game. 2 points for d5. It's a good, strong move. Rook e8 will get you a point. That does develop the rook, puts it on the semi-open e-file, and it does allow perhaps for the bishop to go to f8 and fianchetto in the future. But d6 I don't think is worth a point actually. I think it's 0 because f4 could be rather annoying, and after knight c6 a move like bishop e3, and I feel that black's pieces aren't very coordinated or well developed. So a move like h6 might have to be played, which does show how bad black's position could well get. So again, 1 point for rook e8 and 2 points for d5. And here another choice, white to move. 3 options. There is f4, bishop f4, and e takes d5. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, well, if you said e takes d5 or pawn f4, you get 2 points. Bishop f4 doesn't really do that well due to knight g6. And while white has got a little bit of play here after losing the pawn, for example, knight b5 here, white isn't really losing, but I think the best white can hope for is a draw in this position. So there isn't enough play to justify sacking the pawn. But the other 2 moves are good for different reasons. If e takes d5 and black recaptures, I hope you spotted that knight takes d5, queen takes d5, white can grab the bishop pair with knight f5. If black plays queen takes queen, white wins a piece with knight e7 check, and then recapturing the queen. So here, queen e6, knight takes, queen takes, and white has, the bishop pair with the pawns in a pretty much perfect position for the 2 bishops. There's an open centre and pawns on opposite sides of the board, and the 2 bishops will coordinate far better than the bishop and the knight. So again, 2 points for e takes d5 due to this endgame advantage. And f4 was played in the game, and it gains a lot of space for white. So 2 points for this move. Black now played knight c6, and white took. Black recaptured. And here there's a choice of 2 moves. One is e takes d5, the other one is e5. Which would you play here? 5 seconds. If you said e5, well done, 2 points. E takes d5 it just allows black to take with the pawn and undouble the pawns. So e5 is the move, and e takes d5 will get you 0. So e5 was played, and here there are 3 options for black. Option number 1 is knight e4. Option number 2, knight d7. Option number 3, bishop c5 check. All right, 5 seconds. Okay, well, if you said knight to e4, you get 1 point. But white can take, and then bishop e3. And white's got slightly better coordination, but the game is far from over. So a move like f5, for example, might not be too bad for black. But improving upon this, 2 points for bishop c5 check, because after the king moves to h1, knight e4 could be played. And now, after knight takes, pawn takes, white doesn't have bishop e3 anymore. So black's pieces are slightly more aggressive and coordinated than white's. 0 points for knight d7 because what can white play here for a bonus point? Should white play g4, doing a pawn storm, or bishop e3? Okay, another 5 seconds, and I'll reveal the answer. Well, g4 is a little bit too slow, I think. White doesn't have enough pieces out to really blast through on the king side, and it does leave squares unprotected. So for that reason, I'll give 0 for g4, but you do get 1 point if you said bishop e3. So good developing move, nothing wrong with it. So in the game, what happened was bishop c5 check, king h1, and bizarrely, knight d7. So white then played bishop d3, rook e8, bishop d2, knight f8 here. So black is maneuvering the pieces. And here we now come to a crossroads. 3 options. Rook e1, g4, queen h5. Okay, and 5 seconds from now. Well, rook e1 will get you 0 because black can actually just force a repetition with bishop f2, and if rook e2 then bishop g4 will embarrassingly lose the exchange, so rook f1, bishop c5 again. So 0 for rook e1 because it doesn't do any damage, but it doesn't improve the position. And -1, you lose a point if you say g4, because now rather than white having a small advantage, black can seize the initiative with queen h4. So threatening g4, and black could well possibly play knight to g6 or e6, sort of coordinating and having pressure against the king side. But you get 3 points for queen h5. It's a very good aggressive move. Black plays g6, and white then plays queen h6. Now, what would you play as black in this position? You have 2 choices. There's knight e6 or knight d7. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, I'll reveal the points for this move in a moment, but knight e6 was played in the game, and what did white do here? I'm not going to give you a choice of moves, but if you get it right, 5 points. Okay, I'll give you an extra few seconds just to mull it over, because this is quite a difficult move to find. Yeah, white plays f5. So if you saw f5, you get 5 points for this. So knight e6 is -2 because white's f5 is so strong. And knight d7 will get you 1 point. So if you said knight d7 and then saw that knight e6 lost to f5, that's 7 points total. It's pretty good. And also for an extra 3 points, if white plays rook a to e1, what would you play as black for 3 points? Alright, bishop f8. And this actually gives the advantage to black now, because if queen h3, knight takes e5 would be very strong, discovering an attack on the queen. So queen g5, queen takes, pawn takes, knight takes e5. Black's bagged a pawn. So, unfortunately, in the game, Morphy's opponent did play knight e6. So if you said that originally, -2. And then for +5, f5 was played. Bishop f8, queen h3. And here, black had to move the knight, as pawn takes is virtually getting squashed and wiped off the board. Knight c5 was played here. So what would you do as white? You have two choices. Rook a to e1 or e6. Okay, well, if you said e6, then you get 3 points. This is very, very good, and it really challenges black's defensive ability here. This move is just wiping away all of black's defensive shield of pawns in front of the king. Rook a e1 isn't very good because of knight takes d3. White can just about have equality with e6, knight takes e1, pawn takes check, and if king takes pawn, then f takes g6, double check, will be crushing for white. So king g7, pawn takes equals anything. I made it a knight because I always find that amusing. Queen takes, rook takes, and white is just about okay in this position, but has lost all of the advantage. So 0 for rook a e1, but +3 for e6, which was played in the game. F takes e6, and Morphy could have taken on g6, but instead he chose f6, e5, f7 check. And where would you move your king as black? Okay, well, if you said king h8, you gain a point. That is what was played. If you said king g7, you lose a point, because white would actually have checkmate with queen h6 check, king h8, pawn takes rook equals queen. And you can delay mate by one move with knight d7, but if you took, then rook takes f8, queen takes f8, queen takes queen, checkmate. So yeah, king g7 does lose a point, but king h8 nets you an extra point. And the game finished with pawn takes rook queen, queen takes the newly promoted queen, bishop takes g6, bishop takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, king takes, rook takes, and the long-awaited developing move, rook a e1. So, tot up all the points. I think there's 30 points in total, and if you got 18 or more, you're very good at tactics. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.